Ladies, Pierre Poilievre's wife wants you to think about whether you're banging too many dudes. I wish I was kidding. Now, because it's Friday, I want to tell you about something that's making me giggle lately. But it's a bit of a scared giggle for reasons I'm gonna get into that include trad wives, rising misogyny, and yes, somehow, Peter Thiel. But first, I have to talk to you about this because if I had to read it, you do too. Before I dive in, I want to give a disclaimer on this. Normally, politicians' family members are off limits, and I absolutely agree with that. But within that context, Pierre Poilievre's wife has become a public figure since she was glued to his side during the campaign, and this is from her public endeavor, Pretty and Smart Co. So within that broader context, I do feel comfortable discussing the content of her public blog, because the piece she published kind of makes my eyes twitch. And in this video, I'm going to use it as a jumping off point for a broader conversation about the conservative women's movement that is as chilling as it is also kind of hilarious. So let's start with the piece. It's titled, "Has Society Become Too Promiscuous?" Amazing. It's actually her analysis of a really awful YouTube video titled, "Has Modern Feminism Gone Too Far?" Sorry, did I scare you? Did I scare you as much as feminism scares men? But seriously, go ahead and look at the result of the P. Diddy case and come back to me and tell me if feminism is going too far. Can you say it with a straight face? Anyway, this YouTube video could be its own piece because it is bad. Honestly, thank God for this woman, because if she wasn't in it, I don't think I would have any hair left because I would have pulled it all out. Which made sense when I actually Googled the podcast itself and saw headlines like this. Awesome information diet. So here is what Anaïda Poilievre wrote about this conversation on her post for her blog, Pretty and Smart Co. She focuses on what they had to say about what she calls the emotional cost of today's casual approach to sex and relationships. She summarizes the three panelist positions, one of which emphasizes the importance of choice. Another includes the concern that hookup culture is deprioritizing caregiving. And the third claims that women don't have the cultural permission to say no, and that hooking up has become reframed as consequence-free, and we don't talk about how apparently 82% of women feel depressed and anxious after a hookup. She doesn't critique any of these premises directly, but that last one I mentioned, yeah, it made me mad. So, if I may, I can think of a lot of reasons why women might feel depressed and or anxious after a hookup, and none of them are because society has become too promiscuous, or because they didn't have the cultural permission to say no, or the other ridiculous premises at hand here. It's because we live in a society that still shames women for these choices, despite the claim that this is somehow being reframed as consequence-free, and where sometimes these interactions are anywhere from just plain unsatisfying to downright traumatizing. But none of that is because society has become too promiscuous. Still, what I'm about to read you is the takeaway that Anaïda had from this conversation. Quote, "Maybe it is time to stop pretending that endless choice always leads to better outcomes, that more sex equals more happiness, that emotional detachment is a strength, because if the most empowered generation of women also feels like the loneliest, then maybe we need to ask why." I just think that's really not the main takeaway of any of this. To me, that takeaway is a very thinly veiled critique from Anaïda of women who want to engage in hookup culture, despite her prefacing it with, "I share this not from a place of judgment." When you outright state that your intended audience is women, and then you turn around and tell them they should stop pretending that endless choice always leads to better outcomes and that more sex equals more happiness, rather than critiquing the society that makes it impossible to make any choice as a woman about sex without being shamed for it, no matter what it is, then you are engaging in the reinforcement of patriarchal narratives that we're seeing so much of these days. And this is where I want to fit this into a bigger picture. Because Anaïda's blog, with its emphasis on being both pretty and smart, and saying where ambition honors femininity, combined with that blog post's cloaked pressure to engage in more traditional values, it fits into a broader trend. We are seeing more more and more trad wife content that sells a life that doesn't actually look anything like what Nara Smith and Ballerina Farm put on display. There's even literally a magazine called Evie Magazine that lionizes the trad wife lifestyle, puts its spokeswomen on the cover, and where the saucy advice is reserved for married women. It's been dubbed conservative Cosmo and has won praise from women's rights icons like Steve Bannon. The couple behind this huge conservative women's magazine went on to launch a femtech company with an app called 28, which offers workouts and food tips based on your menstrual cycles, which is women's health information that you put into the app. It raised $3.2 million in its initial funding round, and $2 million of that came from Peter Thiel. You know, the same real-life supervillain who co-founded Palantir, the spy tech company. Yeah, I definitely trust an app that keeps an eye on women's reproductive health, that has huge amounts of funding from a man who basically bankrolled J.D. Vance's career, and who once wrote that women getting the right to vote was bad for his vision of democracy. Anyway, this all seems fine, right? Yeah, no. It's not. I'm just kidding. See, whether it's a blog post from a politically active wife of a man who still wants to be Canada's Prime Minister, or the explosion of trad wife influencer content, conservative women's magazines, and femtech that's backed by Peter Thiel, we should always be wary of any attempts to reinforce narratives that push a form of a traditional lifestyle on women. Because there are a lot of men with a lot of money who seem way too interested in that happening. Shit, I did that thing where I was trying to make a fun video and just ended up being scary again, didn't I? Anyway, have a nice weekend. What do you think of all this?